You don't need to be louder to be smarter. You don't need more words to have more influence. The truth is, real power is quiet. It's controlled. It's intentional. While everyone else is trying to be heard, you're learning how to be understood without speaking, because the game isn't about winning arguments, it's about understanding people. And the moment you understand people, their emotions, their patterns, their triggers, you don't need to fight for control. You already have it. Most people walk into a room trying to prove something, trying to impress, trying to dominate. But the person who wins is the one who doesn't need to. They observe, they listen, they stay calm when others don't. And in that calm, in that silence, they see what others miss. This isn't manipulation, it's awareness, it's discipline. It's choosing not to react impulsively, but to respond intentionally, if you even need to respond at all. Because sometimes the smartest move you can make is no move at all. When you master your presence, your emotions, and your silence, you stop chasing control and start embodying it. And that's when everything changes. Most people lose control of a situation in the first few seconds, not because they lack intelligence, but because they react before they understand. There is a moment, small, almost invisible, between what happens to you and how you respond. Most people never notice it. They move too fast. They hear something, feel something, and instantly react. That reaction feels natural, even justified, but it often costs them clarity, control, and influence. The people who truly stand out are not the ones who react quickly. They are the ones who see clearly before they move at all. Awareness begins where urgency ends. When something unexpected happens, your instinct might push you to defend, explain, interrupt, or prove yourself. But awareness asks something different of you. It asks you to pause, not out of hesitation, but out of intention. Because in that pause, you gain access to information others ignore. Tone of voice, body language, timing, what is being said and what is being avoided. When you start with awareness, you stop making the moment about you. You stop asking, how do I respond? And begin asking, what is really happening here? That shift alone changes everything. Because once you understand the dynamics beneath the surface, your response becomes precise instead of emotional. People who react immediately often reveal more than they intend. They show their insecurities, their triggers, their need to be right. And once that's exposed, they lose leverage. But the person who stays aware holds that leverage, not by force, but by discipline. They are not controlled by the moment, they are studying it. Awareness also gives you emotional distance. It allows you to feel without being ruled by what you feel. You can notice frustration without expressing it. You can recognize tension without escalating it. And in doing so, you create space. Space to think, to choose, to lead. This is where real influence begins, not in speaking louder or faster, but in understanding deeper. When others are caught in the noise of reaction, you remain grounded in observation, and because of that, your actions carry weight. Your words, when you choose to use them, are not rushed or scattered. They are deliberate. There is also a quiet confidence that comes with awareness. You no longer feel the need to jump into every conversation or defend every point. You recognize that not every moment requires your input. And that restraint is powerful. It signals control, it signals certainty, it signals that you are not driven by impulse. Starting with awareness is not about being passive, it is about being intentional. It is about choosing to understand before choosing to act. Because once you act without awareness, you are simply reacting. And reaction is predictable. Awareness is not. Over time, this approach changes how people perceive you. They begin to notice that you don't get easily pulled into chaos, that you don't rush to conclusions, that you see things others miss. And without trying to prove anything, you earn a different kind of respect. Because in a world where most people react without thinking, the one who observes before acting becomes impossible to ignore. The person who speaks the least often learns the most, and the one who learns the most rarely needs to prove anything. Silence is often misunderstood. In a world that rewards constant noise, quick responses, and immediate opinions, staying quiet can feel like falling behind. People assume that if you're not speaking, you have nothing to say. They assume that confidence must be loud, visible, and undeniable. But the truth operates differently. Silence, when used with intention, becomes one of the most powerful forms of control. When you choose silence, you remove yourself from the chaos of reaction. You stop competing for attention and start observing behavior. And in that observation, patterns begin to reveal themselves. People fill silence because they're uncomfortable with it. They rush to explain, justify, or impress, and in doing so, they give away more than they realize. Silence creates space, and space creates opportunity. When you don't interrupt, when you don't rush to respond, you allow others to expand. They speak longer, they expose more detail, they reveal emotion. What starts as a simple statement often turns into something much deeper, not because you pushed, but because you allowed. There is a discipline in holding your words. It requires confidence to resist the urge to prove yourself in every moment. It requires control to listen without preparing your reply. Most people are not listening to understand, they are listening to respond. But when you stay silent, truly silent, you shift from reacting to learning. And learning changes everything, because once you understand someone's motivations, fears, and patterns, you don't need to overpower them. You don't need to argue or convince. You already know where they stand. You already know what matters to them. That awareness gives you influence without confrontation. Silence also carries presence. It forces people to notice you in a different way. When everyone else is talking, the one who isn't becomes the focal point, not because they demand attention, but because they don't chase it. There is a calm strength in that restraint. It signals that you are comfortable, that you are not pressured by the need to be heard. This doesn't mean silence is absence. It means silence is intentional. It means you are choosing when to speak instead of speaking out of habit. And when you finally do speak, your words carry more weight. They are not lost in noise. They are not diluted by overuse. They land with clarity because they are rare and deliberate. Silence can also shift power in a conversation. When someone expects a reaction and doesn't receive one, it unsettles them. It forces them to reflect, to question, to fill the gap. And in that moment, the dynamic changes. You are no longer reacting to them, they are adjusting to you. There is also protection in silence. Not every thought needs to be shared, not every emotion needs to be expressed in real time. When you learn to hold your words, you protect your energy, your intentions, and your direction. You become less predictable, less reactive, and more composed. Over time, silence becomes more than a tactic. It becomes a mindset. You begin to value understanding over expression, observation over reaction, clarity over noise, and in doing so, you develop a quiet confidence that doesn't need validation. Because the strongest presence in any room is not the one speaking the most, it's the one who knows exactly when to speak and when not to. People decide how seriously to take you before you say a single word, based entirely on what you project without speaking. Before a conversation even begins, something has already been communicated. It happens in the way you enter a space, the way you carry yourself, the way you look at others, and the way you hold stillness. Most people believe influence starts when they speak, but influence begins long before that. It begins the moment you are seen. Presence is not about appearance alone, it is about energy, awareness, and control. Two people can wear the same clothes, stand in the same place, and yet create completely different impressions. One feels uncertain, scattered, seeking approval. The other feels grounded, calm, certain without needing validation. The difference is not external, it is internal, and it shows without effort. When your presence is strong, you don't rush. Your movements are deliberate, not hurried. You don't look around for reassurance, you observe with intention. Eye contact becomes steady, not aggressive, not avoiding. You don't try to dominate the room, you become stable within it. And that stability sends a message people feel immediately. Most people underestimate how much they communicate without words. Nervous habits, restless movement, lack of focus, these signals tell a story. They suggest doubt, urgency, or insecurity. And even if the words that follow are confident, the message has already been weakened. Because people trust what they see before they trust what they hear. A strong presence, on the other hand, creates alignment. Your body language, your pace, your attention, they all match the confidence you want to convey. You are not forcing an image, you are expressing control. And that control is subtle, but powerful. It makes others pause. It makes them listen differently. There is also a sense of calm authority in presence. Not authority that demands attention, but one that earns it naturally. When you are fully present, you are not distracted by what others think of you. You are not preoccupied with proving yourself. You are simply aware of the moment, aware of the people in it, and aware of your role within it. This awareness changes how others respond to you. They begin to mirror your energy. If you are calm, they slow down. If you are focused, they pay attention. If you are composed, they become more measured. Without saying anything, you influence the tone of the interaction. Presence also requires consistency. It is not something you turn on only when it matters. It is built over time through how you carry yourself in small, everyday moments. The way you stand when no one is watching. The way you listen when it's easier to interrupt. The way you remain steady when situations shift. And when challenges arise, your presence becomes even more important. Anyone can appear confident when things are easy, but when pressure increases, most people lose that control. Their posture changes, their movements become rushed, their focus breaks. This is where presence separates itself. When you remain steady under pressure, you signal something deeper than confidence. You signal control. Over time, people begin to associate you with that control. They expect you to be composed. They trust your reactions before they happen. And that trust gives you influence that words alone cannot create, because by the time you speak, the decision has already been made. Your presence has already shaped the perception. And what you say next only confirms what they've already felt. The moment you lose control of your emotions is the moment you hand control of the situation to someone else. Emotions are powerful. They can sharpen your awareness or completely cloud your judgment. Most people don't realize how quickly a situation shifts the second emotions take over. A raised voice, a defensive tone, an impulsive reaction. These moments feel small, but they reveal something much bigger. They reveal that the situation is no longer being led by intention, but by impulse. Emotional control is not about suppressing what you feel. It is about understanding it before it controls you. There is a difference between feeling anger and acting on it immediately. There is a difference between experiencing pressure and letting it dictate your decisions. The people who hold the greatest advantage are not those who feel less, but those who manage what they feel with precision. When emotions rise, most people react without thinking. They interrupt, defend, escalate. In doing so, they expose their triggers. And once those triggers are visible, they become predictable. Predictability weakens influence because it allows others to anticipate and control your reactions. But when you maintain emotional control, something shifts. You become less predictable, more composed, and far more difficult to influence. You are no longer reacting to the moment, you are choosing your place within it. That choice creates distance between stimulus and response, and in that distance lies power. There is also clarity and control. When you are not overwhelmed by emotion, you can see the situation as it is, not as it feels. You can separate what is being said from how it is being said. You can identify intention instead of reacting to tone. This clarity allows you to respond in a way that is effective, not just immediate. People often mistake emotional reactions for strength. They believe that expressing everything instantly shows confidence or authenticity. But uncontrolled emotion does not command respect. It creates instability. True strength is measured by what you can hold back, not just what you express. Control also changes how others behave around you. When someone tries to provoke a reaction and fails, the dynamic shifts. They lose leverage because their strategy depends on your response. Without it, they are forced to adjust. And in that adjustment, their position weakens while yours strengthens. This does not mean becoming distant or unfeeling. It means becoming deliberate. You still feel, you still care, you still engage, but you do so on your terms. You decide when to speak, how to respond, and what deserves your energy. Nothing is taken from you without your permission. Over time, emotional control builds a reputation. People begin to see you as steady, reliable, difficult to shake. They trust your reactions because they are not driven by impulse. They respect your presence because it does not fluctuate with every challenge, and that consistency creates influence that does not rely on force. In high-pressure moments, this advantage becomes even more visible. While others rush, panic, or overreact, you remain grounded. You assess, you observe, you choose. And because of that, your actions carry more weight, not because they are louder, but because they are intentional. Emotional control is not something you achieve once. It is something you practice continuously. Every interaction, every challenge, every unexpected moment becomes an opportunity to strengthen it. The more you practice, the more natural it becomes, and the more natural it becomes, the more control you gain, not just over your emotions, but over the outcomes they influence. The greatest advantage you can have is when people misjudge your potential because they stop preparing for what you're truly capable of. Most people spend their energy trying to be seen, trying to be recognized, trying to prove their worth in every room they enter. They speak quickly, act boldly, and reveal everything they can do at the earliest opportunity. It feels like strength, but often it is exposure. Because the more you show too soon, the easier it becomes for others to define you, predict you, and limit you. There is a different kind of strength in restraint, in allowing people to form their own assumptions without rushing to correct them. When someone underestimates you, they lower their expectations. They become less guarded, less strategic, less attentive, and in that space, without force or confrontation, you gain access to something valuable, clarity. Underestimation creates openness. People reveal more when they don't feel challenged. They speak freely, they act casually, they show patterns they would otherwise hide, and while they are comfortable, you are aware. You are observing how they think, how they respond, what they prioritize. That awareness becomes your advantage, not because you are manipulating the situation, but because you are understanding it more deeply than they expect. There's also freedom in not needing to prove yourself immediately. When you remove that pressure, you operate differently. You become more patient, more focused, more intentional. You are no longer reacting to how others perceive you. You are focused on what actually matters: timing, precision, and execution. Many people fear being underestimated because they associate it with being overlooked. But being overlooked can be powerful when you understand how to use it. It allows you to move without resistance. It allows you to develop without scrutiny. It allows you to act when the moment is right, rather than when attention demands it. When people believe they have already figured you out, they stop looking deeper, they stop questioning their assumptions, and that is where your advantage grows. Because while they remain fixed in their perception, you continue to evolve beyond it. This approach requires confidence, not the loud kind, but the quiet kind. The kind that does not need constant validation. The kind that is comfortable being misunderstood for a period of time because it trusts the outcome more than the moment. You are not trying to win attention. You are preparing to deliver impact. Timing becomes everything. When you finally choose to act, it is not rushed or reactive. It is deliberate. And because expectations were low, the impact is greater. What would have been seen as normal becomes unexpected. What would have been ignored becomes undeniable. There is also control in choosing what to reveal and when to reveal it. You are not hiding who you are. You are managing how and when your capabilities are seen. That control keeps you from being boxed into someone else's perception. It keeps you flexible, adaptable, and difficult to define. Over time, people begin to recognize the pattern. They realize that what they saw at first was incomplete, that there was more beneath the surface than they assumed, and by the time they adjust their perception, you are already ahead. Not because you rushed to prove anything, but because you allowed your actions to speak at the right moment. Letting others underestimate you is not about shrinking yourself. It is about refusing to perform on demand. It is about understanding that true strength does not need immediate recognition. It reveals itself through consistency, through timing, and through results that cannot be ignored. The difference between a reaction and a powerful decision is often just a few seconds of restraint that most people never take. There is a space between what happens to you and what you choose to do next. It is small, almost invisible, and most people move past it without noticing. They react instantly, driven by emotion, habit, or pressure. But those who learn to recognize that space and stay in it just a little longer gain something most people never develop: control. The pause is not hesitation. It is not uncertainty. It is a deliberate act of awareness. When something happens, your instinct may push you to respond immediately, to defend, to explain, to prove, to interrupt. That urgency feels natural, but it often leads to outcomes that are driven by emotion rather than intention. The pause interrupts that pattern. When you pause, even for a moment, you create distance. Distance between the trigger and your response. Distance between what you feel and what you choose to express. And in that distance, clarity begins to form. You start to see the situation more completely, not just from your perspective, but from a wider view. Most people never take this step. They are caught in a cycle of immediate reaction. And because of that, they become predictable. Their responses are shaped by their emotions, and their emotions are easy to read. But when you master the pause, you break that cycle. You become less reactive, less predictable, and far more intentional. The pause also changes the dynamic of any interaction. When someone expects a quick reaction and doesn't get one, it shifts the energy. It forces them to slow down, to reconsider, to fill the silence. That shift gives you time, not just to think, but to observe. You begin to notice details that would have been missed in a rushed response. There is also strength in restraint. Anyone can speak quickly, anyone can react under pressure. But holding your response, choosing your moment, requires discipline. It shows that you are not controlled by the situation. It shows that you are deciding how to engage rather than being pulled into it. Over time, the pause becomes a habit. You no longer feel the need to respond instantly. You become comfortable with silence, comfortable with thinking before speaking. And that comfort creates confidence, not the loud kind, but the steady kind that comes from knowing you are in control of yourself. The pause is also where better decisions are made. When you give yourself even a few seconds, you allow logic to catch up with emotion. You allow intention to guide action. And that often leads to responses that are more measured, more effective, and more aligned with what you actually want to achieve. It is in these small moments that the biggest differences are created. A reaction might feel satisfying in the moment, but it can cost you influence, clarity, and respect. A pause, on the other hand, may feel uncomfortable at first, but it builds something far more valuable over time. Mastering the pause is not about slowing down everything you do. It is about knowing when to slow down in the moments that matter. It is about recognizing that you don't have to give an immediate answer, that you don't have to match someone else's urgency, that you always have the option to choose your response. And as you practice it, you begin to notice a shift. Situations that once felt overwhelming become manageable. Conversations that once pulled you in become easier to navigate. And decisions that once felt rushed become clear. Because in a world that moves fast and reacts faster, the one who can pause holds a quiet but undeniable advantage.